One of the first choices a blacksmith has to make is what style and weight of hammer. And you need to use those two phrases together, the style and the weight. Let's have a look at these three commercially made. These are each 1,000 grams or 2.2 pounds. So we're going to start off with the French pattern. French pattern has this step here. French pattern typically has a rectangular face, not something that I enjoy, but it does have a nice wide peen, something that I do enjoy, and it's thick. So easy to use because the weight is closest to the haft or the handle, so this would be a very easy entry-level hammer, not something I would choose because of the rectangular face. Next would be the German style. You can see that things are starting to get stretched out now, that the working surfaces are further away from the handle. It's got a square face, something I do enjoy, and I like these facets. I use these a lot when drawing out welding, etc. I often park the edge of that hammer into the piece I'm trying to work. The cross peen is a little narrow for me, but it is reasonably thick, so I enjoy that, and I can get away with the narrowness. The next hammer is the Swedish style, and if you think that I am a British smith and I learned to smith with this actual hammer, a ball peen, and so you can see a weight forward, lighter on the back. Weight forward is a very aggressive hammer, so I get more hit for my buck or per unit of energy by using a weight forward hammer. So if I put that away and I look at something that has a cross peen associated with it, I'm now looking at the Swedish style of hammer. Again, a square face, and this is as big as I would like to go, 1.5 inches, 1.5 max, no more than that. I don't care for that because I can't get it into some places when I want to work. It does have facets that I use. These are a little thin, but I can make that work. The cross peen is wide, fine, but again a little thin. I've got to come back a little bit to find some meat to use. So a little thin or a little sharp for my liking, but I can make it work. So if I were to prioritize this, the French style would go away, and I'd leave you with this as an entry style hammer in either 1,000 or an 800 gram, and then this as a little more intermediate hammer. You can get into this at 900 grams, so if you were just going to buy one hammer and you were just starting, I would suggest the 900 gram Swedish. This is the 1,000, and then they go up to 1,200 grams, which is getting on the top end for me. My go-to weight is 2 3/4 pounds. That's a hammer that I can use all day, every day. Once you've chosen the hammer of your liking, you're going to have to dress the handle. Hammers to me are a kit, they're not a finished item. And so I dress the faces, I dress the peen, and I dress the handle. And if I look at my relaxed hand, you'll notice it's two parallel-sided pieces. So I want something that is straight-sided, that's going to fit in that gap, and I can hold it with my finger, forefinger, and I can use the other 3 fingers for acceleration. Which leads me to your next purchase, which is going to be a Farriers Rasp. Now typically you would want to enter into a conversation with your local farrier and get these used, because that's all the sharp we need them. But the first one you might want to order online with handle, which just screws on, and then with your sharp or overly sharp rasp, then you can run that along the handle, get this to where you want it, and then you can put this into hot rasp service. Thereafter you just want used ones from your local farrier. So your next purchase would be the Farriers Rasp. After you've got your handle where you want it, you want to do something to protect it. This is a piece of old fire hose, but bit of material, whatever it is, you need to make some form of protection, so when this is in a tool bag bouncing along with your tongs and your rasps, etc., your handle doesn't get dinged. While you're at the Farriers store, you might as well have a look at their cross peens. This one, round face, and if you think of round as just square with the corners overly gone, you can see how that would work with my using the edges or the facets of a square hammer, square faced hammer. It has a nice cross peen. This one's a little sharp for me, and there are a variety of this style on the shelves of your local farrier supply or online. This is an earlier version. This hammer is probably 100 and something years old. This is a champion. This one is 2 3/4 pounds, I believe. It should say so there. And I've used this hammer a lot. I like the width of the peen, and that looks like it's very wide and bulky. It's not. That moves metal very well. It's not overly sharp, and it's wide enough for me. With your anvil, the anvil height is important. There are a variety of ways of assessing the anvil height, whether you're brushing your knuckles or whatever it is. I'll add my idea to the mix, and mine is as bad as everybody else's. But I take my average stock, for me that's 1/2 inch. I take the hammer that's in my hand most of the day, and bear in mind that this distance may change depending on what hammer you're using. And so I put the hammer on top of my average stock, and then I look at my elbow. Is this overly straight, i.e. the anvil is too low and I'm going to hurt my elbow, or is my arm overly bent and I'm not utilizing the full power of my swing? So I want something where my arm is just slightly bent, and that to me would be the correct average place of using the height of the anvil. And so of course, as soon as you bring in a chisel or something like that, then the height of my anvil, my working plane, is just finished, and that's why mine's as bad as everybody else's. But put your average on, put your hammer on, and then look at your elbow and make sure you're not hurting yourself, and make sure you're getting everything out of the swing that you think you should be getting. I have a variety of furniture surrounding my anvil, and it's my typical bottom tools. My go-tos typically are the anvil block. So anything that I'm going to do at the anvil that may result in damage to the anvil, I'm going to do on the block. This block has a variety of different radii on the sides. This is a consumable. I have some half rounds, of which my most popular would be a 3/4 inch half round, and I use this for resizing bar, punching round bar, welding various sorts and sundries. Some V-bits. I have a Hardy cutoff. Mine is a butcher. I prefer the butcher over the normal Hardy cutoff. I typically use a hot cut chisel, and I'll reach for this only sometimes, but when I need it, I need the butcher. I have some fullers, various sizes. These are homemade again, so from 5/16 up to 3/4. A blacksmith guillotine tool, and probably most important would be a pair of rivet tongs. And with the rivet tongs, I can pick up a warm drift from the floor after it's gone through, and without burning myself, and then quench that off. So I'm never tempted to just try and pick up a hot drift. I've always got the tongs sitting right there at my anvil. A couple of brushes, because they always walk off. So I start off with 2 at the start of the day and see where they disappear to. And then a piece of broken grinding wheel that I use for polishing tools that I've made during heat treatment, polishing it, getting the bare metal, letting the colours run. And that's my typical furniture around the edge of my anvil. Tongs typically fall into 3 sets. You've got your open or flat jaw, you'll have your box jaw, and then you'll have your bolt jaw. These are homemade or custom made, shall we say, in your own shop, and then you have commercially available. These are box jaw. These were from Blacksmith Supply, John Elliott, available online. And these were Blacksmith Depot, again available online. These being the V-bit tongs. They also make the box jaw. And then Tom Tongs, or the John Elliott Blacksmith Supply tongs. I would say you probably need to buy a couple of pair of tongs, whether they're used or commercially made, before you can make your own. But I would encourage you to start making your own tongs and not just buying the commercially available ones. You're very limited in the size and shape of your commercially available ones, where you can go anywhere if you make them yourself. One of your next major purchases is going to be the post vise. There are a number of things to look for in the post vise. Most things where things are bent, twisted, etc., you can recover from. Where I find it's most difficult to recover from are if the threads are worn. These should be square. They're an Acme thread, so they should be as square as possible. I don't know if you can pick up on this, but these are slightly triangular, or certainly on their way. So this particular set is wearing out. You want to have a look inside of the box, making sure that's the same as well. Make sure there's a tab there that's going to retain that. and then those should fit together and operate smoothly. If you're lacking the pin or the mounting hardware, that's fairly easy. We're blacksmiths, we should be able to make or fabricate that. Staying with the post vise, there's a couple of things you can do to increase the longevity of post vise. First is lubricate the box and the spring. Do that every however long, week, 2 weeks, whatever it is you think you need. Secondly would be to make yourself some Vise Spacers. And I have these in incremental sizes going up in about 1/16 from 1/4 inch and on up. How do these work? If you have a long forging that you can't get into the middle of the jaws, you're obliged to hold or clamp the piece off to the side of the vise. When you tighten up the vise, this is going to rack the jaws, not something you want because you can bend the jaws. So enter the Vise Spacer. Now you can clamp your piece, whatever it is, into the jaws, and the jaws will hold parallel, clamping both pieces firmly in the vise. Finishing off, my last 3 things would be a stainless steel gravy boat. This I keep next to the slack tub so I can fill this when I'm quenching, and then the hot steam generated from quenching the stock is away from my hand, so I like the gravy boat. Old coffee can, this gets filled with water, so when you're using your tools you can dip them in the water, keep the tools cool as you're working. And then lastly, after you've made something, you need to clean it up, get rid of the scale, just some white vinegar, and then you can pickle your product in vinegar overnight, get rid of all the scale, and then bring it out, wash it in water to get rid of the acid, and then finish of your choice. And you need to finish fairly quickly because it'll rust very quickly within minutes, especially if it's in a humid area. So those are the 3 things that will complement your blacksmith shop.